Hi everyone, I'm back with another video from the Season 6 PTR. On that PTR server I've also played some Bloodwave Bone Spirit, which actually turns out to be one of the strongest builds that we have seen. When I was playing it here, my setup was not really optimized. I kind of rushed this out in the last hour before the server went down, but I was able to very comfortably clear Pit 100s, which is the highest difficulty that we had on the PTR. This build revolves around the Blood Artisan's Cuirass, the unique chest. It has been in the game forever, but it has been buffed in the past. And there are also some other changes that make this Bloodwave Bone Spirit combo much better than before. So the way that this works is that you need to pick up blood orbs, and whenever you do that and you pick up a certain number, which goes down to 3 at the minimum, you will spawn a Bone Spirit. So what you do is you spam Bloodwave, you spam Blood Lance, to collect those blood orbs spawned by the blood wave, and then these bone spirits will automatically fly out and they are actually destroying. And you see here there's like multiple of them going and coming out like every second basically when I'm standing there. It's kind of hard to see sometimes with the visuals with the numbers here, but if you pay attention you can see the gray turquoise explosions and you see the bone spirits flying. It's a lot of them. Now with all that being said, there were some bugs that made this build unintentionally stronger than it should be, especially because of the unique item that I mentioned. With the Blood Artisan's Cuirass, it's supposed to give you an up to 100% damage buff depending on how much life you have. Generally, you would expect to be full life and then get a 100% damage buff from that chest, but it was actually scaling beyond that if you had more life. So if you stacked, for example, a Doombringer and life rolls everywhere and these kind of things. Some people were doing that, not in my case, but in general, you just have more damage than you should based on your actual life value. So that is definitely a bug, and that may or may not get fixed. And if it will be fixed, then this would be a relatively noticeable nerf to the build. Not noticeable to the point where I think you cannot clear a Pit 100 with the PTR scaling at all, but it would probably not be like the #1 build or something like that. So that being said though, I think the setup is pretty cool. It feels very fun to play as well. And there are various ways of tweaking it a little bit to your liking for a bit more quality of life, for a bit more mobility that I also want to go into. I have a planner that I will show you. And in general, I just had a really good time playing Necromancer on the PTR. I also have a few other things to show for the Necromancer. For example, I've played Sever, so you may see that very soon. But overall, it was really fun, and Necros in general are looking really good for Season 6. They have a bunch of very powerful builds now, very much based around Bone Spirit. I also played Soul Rift and showed that off the other day, for example. That was also really fun. This is the new unique spell for Necromancers that can be both a support for many builds or even a carry of its own. So that was very fun. So overall, it's looking actually pretty cool for Necromancers, I gotta say. And also here for this build that you can see, especially in the boss fights, like this has some serious damage output here. As you see, these Pit 100 bosses were just melting in like half a minute or something like that. And as I mentioned, I was lacking a lot of extra damage boosts here that I could have still gotten from like just better gear and so on. So let's jump into the setup here. I have made this planner here, the Bloodwave Spirit. This is also something you can find on my Discord if you're ever looking for any of my planners. The only stuff I don't have there just yet is the Spiritborn, because I'm still kind of like working. It's like a work in progress here, but if you ever look for something, you can see my planners here in the Woody Builds channel, and I will also add Spiritborn there very soon, for example. Anyway, so the main combo about this is what I described, Blood Artisan's Cuirass. You pick up 3 blood orbs. Every time you spawn a blood wave, you get 6 blood orbs. So this means that per blood wave, you can get 2 bone spirits. And then there's the tidal aspect that gives you 3 blood wave casts per cast. So you get 18 orbs or 6 bone spirits every time you cast blood wave. And then you have the gore quills aspect that makes your blood lance consume blood orbs to shoot more lances. Now all of that doesn't really matter in terms of what the lances do. The only thing that matters is you consume the blood orbs. So this is effectively just there, so you don't have to constantly run around and try to collect those blood orbs. You just stand there and shoot, ding, 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 ding. And every time you do that, you will consume, actually, I'm not sure how many, I think it's like a handful of blood orbs. And then you will shoot out like 1 or 2 bone spirits. So you can actually get to the point where you have to stop spamming blood wave because you have so many blood orbs on the ground, and I have like 50 of them on the ground, and I just need to spam bloodlands like 10 times in a row in order to kind of clean up the area. So depending on how long the fight is, you need to like, you know, cast a lot of blood wave and then lands, wave, lands, wave, kind of in back and forth. But as you do this more and more and the fight drags on, you actually go more towards lances and less than blood waves. So you kind of need to get the engine rolling at the start by just spamming blood wave as much as you can. And then at some point you just have so much that it's going to be fine, and you mostly cast lances and then a few waves in between. So this comes with a bit of muscle memory and then looking at the screen of like if there's enough orbs lying around. And the way that you can actually reset that blood wave cooldown that you saw in the clip, it was always just coming back instantly, is the fast blood aspect. So I put this on the neck here. I would say this is optional on the neck. If you have really good gear in the late game, this can also go on the ring. This is a resource aspect. But yeah, this reduces your ultimate cooldown for each blood orb by 4.5 seconds on the perfect roll on the neck. So this means the base cooldown is 47.5 right now. I only have 2 points in there actually, because I realized I don't even need to invest more points to reduce the cooldown further. Every time you cast Blood Wave, you get 18 orbs, and those will easily reset the cooldown by itself. So it is very easy to sustain this, and as I mentioned, late game you can even get to the point where you don't even have this on the neck, and you can get even more damage out of this. But just to kind of be safe, especially for starting out when you don't have perfect gear and so on, it probably makes more sense on the amulet. I'm planning to theory craft a little bit around, like, you know, some earlier versions of this build as well, where you basically just go with Blood Artisans and then, you know, maybe more scuffed setup and so on. Right now I only have like the high-end version that I played here on the PTR, where this is like more easily sustainable. But you probably want to do, for example, more Blood Wave ranks early on to get lower cooldown, because every rank reduces the cooldown now. Or, for example, it also depends a little bit on the map that you're playing. So when you shoot a blood wave into a wall, you know, whatever is in a wall will not spawn blood orbs, for example. So there is also a bit of a reason to actually overcap your cooldown a little bit, let's say, because it just makes the entire feeling of the build much more smooth, and you don't have to constantly pay, you know, that close attention to, do you actually spawn all those blood orbs? It's actually fairly hard to position yourself, you know, push the enemies into a wall, for example, and then also not lose any of the blood orbs. So that's also part of the reason why I really liked the fast blood on the neck. Yeah, and the rest of this is just like mostly getting lots of damage buffs. Like, for example, you have Roughness Chosen for big attack speed. This kind of like makes everything feel smooth. So while we're spamming Bloodlands, you get a lot of attack speed. And then we have the Sacrificial here. We sacrifice all of our minions. There's like Bone Spirits just popping out all the time here. There's also another good power here, which is Serration, which usually goes with Bone Spirit builds as well. That gives you extra crit damage depending on your resources. So that also works if you want to do that. You also have the Ossified Essence that goes with like having extra resources, for example. So you want to try to get a bit of extra maximum resource, for example, from the Paragon tree. There's a bunch of stuff like that. That just gives you an extra damage boost here. But compared to the regular Bone Spirit build, where you actually have Bone Spirit on your bar and you spam it all the time, here we just do it with Lances, and we don't actually go for like incredible amounts of maximum essence. We mostly just want to try to spam them super fast by picking up those blood orbs all the time. Now, in a setup that is pre-mythic, I would do a few changes here. Number one, I would probably include the Serration aspect that I just described instead of the Starless Skies. Starless Skies is a very powerful damage bonus, even though we don't really care about the resource portion of it. It does have just very good stats and a nice damage boost, but alternatively, a normal ring, Serration is definitely usable. And then I have to have Air of Perdition. This is a new helm that gives you lots of crit, lots of core skill ranks, and then also the 60% damage bonus. Very powerful item, especially for builds that don't want Harlequin Crest for cooldowns or something like that. So this just works in this build. But before that, I think you can also do stuff like Godslayer Crown. The AoE of Bone Spirit, for example, is very small, and it always goes to the closest target. So if you can like walk into a pack and then trigger Godslayer Crown to pull everything together and have everything like clumped up, similar to what Corpse Tendrils does, for example. So you can do it with Corpse Tendrils as well, but you would have to have like another option here as well. And Corpse Tendrils does have its own cooldown that will take a little while. And I found that sometimes there would just be like, you know, some random enemy rushing at me or coming from the other side or whatever that I wouldn't catch with the Corpse Tendrils necessarily. So Godslayer could be a thing, but you could also go for like a Harlequin if you wanted more cooldown. This just makes it easier to sustain this entire setup, for example. But it's not as powerful as Air of Perdition. Or maybe just like another normal helm and you have like extra maximum resources, and then you can put like an extra power there or something like that. Also, I have Sever in the setup here, so this is something I've been experimenting with. The reason for that is the Inexorable Reaper aspect. This makes your Sever into a mobility skill with a 3.5 seconds cooldown. which I personally quite like. But if you want to do like a maximum DPS setup, then you would probably go concussive strikes. So this is an option here. There's also Cursed Aura, which is kind of cool. Cursed Aura gives you just kind of like a, the curse around you all the time, so you don't need to cast it. But I didn't really find that to be a huge problem. But for like a more speed farming variant, this is definitely something you can include there. And for the rest of the skill tree, we mostly just pick up, full investment into Bone Spirit. We have a bunch of the Bone passives for the extra damage, Ossified, and then the Blood Wave here. And the rest is just kind of like, okay, we have the sacrifice passives, we have damage and offensive passives all over the place. So all this stuff here. There's also a new cluster, the Necrotic Fortitude here, and also the Titan's Fall. So this is like a really nice new passive that Necromancers have gotten here, where you first get a barrier, so you can very easily stack up barriers. This makes Necros generally way more tanky than in the past. And here, while fortified, if you do more damage to elites, that's kind of cool. We also have Finality, a new passive here. So 15% extra damage after casting an ultimate. Since you're spamming Blood Wave all the time, this is permanently up. So this is all really nice stuff here. And we also just have like this 1 point here in Bloodlands. And don't really want to invest very much. Easier said than done, because it still has rank 19 in this build, because you get core skill ranks, core skill ranks, core skill ranks. So it looks kind of funny, but you're not actually dealing damage with Blood Wave even with 19 ranks. It's all for the Bone Spirit here. And for the runes, I chose the Petrify and the Warcry, just like extra DPS. So many builds did something like this. And we also trigger them very easily, because here it says cast at non-channel core skill. We spam Blood Lances very fast all the time. And I think this even worked with the Bone Spirits that came out of the chest. So in that case, that was pretty cracked. And then we also have the cast and ultimate skill. Very easy activator for a build like this, where you just spam Blood Wave basically every second. This gave a lot of offerings, so you can kind of get whatever you want online super easily. And for the Paragons, it looks like this. So there are these 5 boards. We have Frailty, the new board here, very strong, gives you up to 40% extra damage. Every Necromancer build ever will go for this. You just need to curse enemies, basically. That's it. Then we have Blood Begets Blood, since we have Blood Orbs all the time. Very powerful damage bonus as well. Scent of Death, which is kind of just here for a bit of extra, but we just get either damage reduction or extra damage. Mostly damage reduction, I guess, since we usually spawn corpses and don't consume them. And lastly, Bone Graft for bone builds. You get extra crit, or extra damage, extra maximum essence. Here's also the essence cluster. That's kind of nice. So you kind of like ramp that up a little bit. And then for the glyphs, we just kind of pick good offensive options, and we have an Undaunted for defense. That also wraps up this video here. So I'll have the planner link down in the description. So stay tuned also for the Season 6 Maxwell updates. I'm personally not working on the Necromancer Maxwell guides. This is mostly Chronix, Sarok, and Macro. But they will definitely min-maxes to the last little detail. So get ready for that. Other than that, hope you enjoyed this video here. I will be back with more PTR footage, and then I'll also start working on expansion and Spiritborn guides very soon. So hope you liked this video, and see you guys next time.